Hello and welcome to MedCrime. Today we shall be looking at bilirubin metabolism and the fate of red blood cells. Normally, the lifespan of a red blood cell in the bloodstream is approximately 120 days, and each and every day 200 billion red blood cells are made and replaced. The old ones, or the senescent red blood cells, are phagocytosed or they are lysed down, and normally this process of lysis occurs either extravascularly or intravascularly. In extravascular lysis of the red blood cells, this occurs in the reticuloendothelial system, mainly in the spleen, through phagocytosis of the red blood cells by the macrophages. And lysis can also occur intravascularly, that means it can occur in the bloodstream. And remember, the red blood cells do not have a nucleus and other organelles, therefore they cannot synthesize new components to replace the damaged ones. When the red blood cells have been broken down, they will release hemoglobin. And this hemoglobin component either binds to haptoglobin, which is a protein in the plasma, or it can be broken down to two components, which are globin and the heme. The heme binds to a second plasma carrier protein known as hemopexin. This hemopexin is then cleared from the circulation by macrophages in the liver. The globin portion, on the other hand, is catabolized by proteases into a constituent amino acids, which are then reused for protein synthesis. And when the iron is removed from the heme element, the non-iron portion of the heme is converted to what is known as biliverdin, and biliverdin is a green pigment. Then this biliverdin is converted to bilirubin, which is a yellow pigment. Bilirubin then enters into the blood and is transported to the liver for conjugation. Within the liver, bilirubin is conjugated and released by the liver cells into bile. Then these bile components are deposited into the gastrointestinal tract, the small intestine, and then into the large intestine. And within the large intestines, the bacteria which are there convert the bilirubin into what's known as urobilinogen, and some urobilinogen is then absorbed back into the blood, and others converted to the yellow pigment known as urobilin. This urobilin is what we find excreted in urine. Most of the produced urobilinogen is eliminated in feces and in the form known as stacobilin, which is the brown pigment which gives the feces its catalytic color. When there is a buildup of these bile pigments in circulation or interstitial fluids, we develop a condition known as jaundice. And normal bilirubin metabolism involves conjugation of this bilirubin by the liver, whereby conjugated bilirubin becomes water soluble, and on the other hand, unconjugated bilirubin is fat soluble. So what are the causes of this jaundice? For jaundice, we classify its causes into three parts: the prehepatic, intrahepatic, and posthepatic. One of the common causes of prehepatic jaundice is haemolysis of the red blood cells, and this occurs in conditions, for example, autoimmune conditions of the blood or abnormal hemoglobin. And in intrahepatic causes or causes within the liver, we have infection, for example, hepatitis A, B, or C infection. Drugs, for example, acetaminophen or alcohol, which causes liver injury, impairing its ability to conjugate the produced bilirubin. And then you have genetic errors of bilirubin metabolism like Gilbert syndrome, Crigger-Najjar syndrome, Durbin-Johnson syndrome, and Rotter syndrome. And we can also have autoimmunity, for example, chronic active hepatitis. And in neonates, we have what's known as neonatal jaundice. That is either be physiologic, which is the commonest cause of intrahepatic jaundice in neonates. And then posthepatic causes of jaundice include the intrahepatic bile duct obstruction or extrahepatic bile ducts. So what is a prehepatic or hemolytic jaundice? A prehepatic jaundice results from excess production of bilirubin that is beyond the liver's ability to conjugate this bilirubin, and this follows hemolysis. Excess red blood cell lysis commonly results as a result of autoimmune diseases of the blood, for example, hemolytic diseases in the newborns, that is the rhesus or ABO blood group incompatibilities. We can also have excess red blood cell lysis or breakdown in structurally abnormal red blood cells, for example, in patients with sickle cell disease, or a breakdown of an extravasated blood. This type of jaundice is characterized by high plasma concentration of unconjugated bilirubin. And remember, unconjugated bilirubin is fat soluble. Then the second type of jaundice is intrahepatic jaundice, whereby there is an impaired uptake, conjugation, and secretion of bilirubin by the liver. This generally reflects dysfunctional liver hepatocytes, and in this case, hyperbilirubinemia is usually accompanied by other abnormalities in biochemical markers of the liver function. And lastly, we have posthepatic jaundice, which is caused by obstruction of the biliary tree. Plasma bilirubin is usually conjugated in these cases, and other biliary metabolites, for example bile acids, accumulate in plasma. And this one is characterized by pale colored stools because there is absence of fecal bilirubin or urobilin, and the urine will be dark colored because it has increased conjugated bilirubin. And in a complete obstruction, urobilin will be absent from urine. And then how do we diagnose jaundice? We'll do liver function tests, whereby we'll assess the levels of liver enzymes. And you realize that conjugated bilirubin will be absent in prehepatic jaundice, but it will be elevated in intrahepatic or posthepatic jaundice. And then AST and ALT will be normal in prehepatic jaundice, but they will be present if there is intrahepatic jaundice, meaning there will be liver injury. And in posthepatic jaundice, which results from obstruction of the biliary tree, you will have normal ranges of AST and AST levels. And in alkaline phosphatases will be normal in prehepatic jaundice because the liver is functioning normally. It will be again normal in intrahepatic jaundice, but will be elevated in posthepatic jaundice. And urine bilirubin will be absent in prehepatic jaundice, but present in intrahepatic and posthepatic ones. And urine urobilinogen will be present in hepatic jaundice and intrahepatic, but absent in posthepatic jaundice. And then another type of jaundice that we have is neonatal jaundice. Neonatal jaundice is common, particularly in premature infants. And this neonatal jaundice is transient in nature, meaning it resolves within the first 10 days. And this happens because of the immaturity of liver enzymes which are involved in bilirubin conjugation. The high levels of unconjugated bilirubin are toxic to the newborn because of its fact that it's fat soluble. It can cross the blood-brain barrier and cause a type of mental retardation known as kernicterus. And neonatal jaundice, which results within the first 24 hours of life or takes longer than 10 days to resolve, is known as pathological jaundice and needs to be further examined and investigated. So if bilirubin levels are too high in these neonates, then we do a therapy known as phototherapy with ultraviolet light to convert it into water-soluble bilirubin for it to be excreted. And if need be, whenever there is excess of it, we'll do what's known as exchange blood transfusion to remove the excess bilirubin from blood. And like we said before, jaundice is a yellowish staining of the skin and the sclera that is caused by a buildup of excess bile pigments in circulation and interstitial fluids. You can see how this yellow coloring appears in this image. And in summary, hyperbilirubinemia or jaundice can be either prehepatic, hepatic, or posthepatic. Prehepatic jaundice results from haemolysis, and this one will be characterized by a presence of unconjugated bilirubin. In hepatic jaundice, we have either genetic defects or primarily liver disease that is responsible for the same, and it will be characterized by presence of both unconjugated and conjugated bilirubin. And lastly, in posthepatic jaundice, which results from the biliary tract, bile duct obstruction, or biliary tree obstruction, or pancreatic head cancer, there will be a conjugated bilirubin in bloodstream.